The cold night and the empty pockets. The night on the alien city was colder than usual. Neon lights flickered across tall glass towers, but down on the streets, shadows ruled every corner. A young human boy named Ethan walked slowly along the wet ground. His jacket was torn, his shoes were thin, and the sharp wind bit into his skin. He hugged himself tightly, but the cold air kept cutting through his small frame. Ethan had been living on the streets for months. He had no parents, no relatives, and no home to return to. Every morning he searched for leftover food from restaurants or begged for a few credits from strangers. Sometimes people gave him a coin, sometimes they pushed him away, and sometimes they pretended not to see him at all. To the citizens of this alien world, he was invisible. That night, Ethan checked his pocket. Only 3 credits remained. It wasn't enough for a meal, and it wasn't enough for shelter. He looked at the coins, sighed, and clenched his fist around them. Maybe tomorrow will be better, he whispered to himself. But deep down, he didn't believe it. The streets around the central bus station were crowded. Different aliens in colorful robes, armored suits, and heavy cloaks moved in all directions. They carried bags, boxes, and glowing devices. Ethan often came here at night because the station was warmer than the open streets. If he was lucky, he could find a corner to rest without being noticed. As he stepped closer to the glowing gates of the station, he saw something unusual. A tall alien with silver skin stood near the ticket machine. His clothing was neat, but his face looked troubled. The alien kept patting his pockets, checking a wrist device, and frowning. He pressed a button on the machine, but it flashed red again and again. The alien muttered words in his own language, clearly frustrated. Ethan watched from a distance. Normally, he stayed away from strangers. Aliens often treated humans as weak or untrustworthy. But something about this alien was different. His eyes looked tired and his shoulders were heavy, as if carrying a burden far beyond money. The bus behind the gates began to hum. Its lights turned bright, ready to depart. Passengers started rushing forward, scanning their tickets. The silver-skinned alien stepped back, confused. The machine still refused his payment. People glanced at him but walked away without offering help. To them, his problem was not their concern. Ethan felt his 3 credits burning in his hand. He knew he should keep them for food, but something inside pushed him forward. His heart beat faster as he approached the tall alien. "Excuse me," Ethan said softly. His voice was small against the noise of the station. The alien turned, surprised to see a thin, ragged human boy standing before him. Ethan held out his hand, showing the 3 small credits. "Here, you can use this for your fare." For a moment, the alien just stared at him. His glowing eyes flickered as if searching the boy's soul. "Why would you give this to me?" he asked slowly, his voice deep and smooth. Ethan shrugged. "Because you need it, and maybe one day someone will help me too." The alien blinked, taken aback. In this cold city where kindness was rare, the words of a starving boy carried more weight than gold. Slowly, the alien reached down and accepted the credits. He placed them into the machine, and the gate opened with a soft chime. The alien looked back at Ethan, who now had empty pockets. The boy gave a small smile, even though his stomach twisted with hunger. The alien could not understand it. Why would a boy who had nothing choose to give away the last of his hope? The bus doors opened. The alien hesitated, then gestured for Ethan to follow him inside. "Come," he said. Ethan froze. He had not expected this. Usually when he gave, he lost. But this time the stranger was inviting him in. For the first time in months, Ethan felt a spark of curiosity. He stepped onto the bus. As the doors closed and the engine roared, the alien sat beside him. The other passengers stared at the odd pair, a homeless human boy and a tall, noble-looking alien. Whispers filled the air. Some laughed quietly, mocking the boy for wasting his money. Others eyed the alien with suspicion, but Ethan didn't care. For now he was warm, sitting inside a moving bus and not shivering on the cold streets. Still, in his mind, a question burned. Who was this alien, and why did his presence feel so different, so heavy, as if a hidden story was waiting to unfold? Outside the window, the city lights stretched like rivers of fire, and Ethan pressed his forehead to the glass. He didn't know it yet, but the decision he made that night to spend his last 3 credits on a stranger's bus fare would change his life forever. The journey on the bus doors closed with a soft hiss, and the vehicle began to glide forward on magnetic rails. The hum of its engine mixed with the faint chatter of passengers. Ethan sat by the window, His thin body pressed against the cold glass, watching the city's neon lights blur into streaks of color. For the first time in many nights, he wasn't standing outside in the freezing wind. Beside him, the tall, silver-skinned alien remained silent. His long hands rested neatly on his knees, and his glowing eyes studied the bus as though it was filled with secrets. Ethan dared a glance at him but quickly looked away. There was something powerful about the stranger, though he had said very little. After a while, the alien finally spoke. His voice was deep yet calm. "Why did you help me back there?" Ethan blinked. He had not expected the question. Because. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You needed it. I know what it feels like when nobody helps, and maybe one day someone will help me too." The alien tilted his head slightly as if surprised. "You had almost nothing, and yet you gave it away." Ethan shrugged. "I didn't have much to lose anyway." He forced a small smile, but his eyes betrayed the sadness buried inside him. The alien studied him in silence. The boy's clothes were worn, his shoes nearly broken, and his face carried the tiredness of someone who had lived far beyond his years. He looked fragile, yet there was strength in the way he spoke. Other passengers whispered among themselves. Some sneered at the sight of a human boy sitting beside a finely dressed alien. "Waste of space," one muttered. Another laughed under his breath. Humans had little respect in this part of the galaxy. They were seen as weak beggars or drifters. Ethan pretended not to hear, but every word cut into him like a knife. The alien, however, heard everything. His glowing eyes moved slowly toward the whispering passengers, and instantly they fell silent. Nobody dared meet his gaze. Ethan noticed the sudden quiet and wondered again. Who exactly was this stranger? The bus rattled as it left the bright districts and moved into darker streets. The air inside grew heavier, and passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ethan hugged his thin jacket tighter around his chest. "Do you have family?" the alien asked suddenly. Ethan froze. He looked down at his empty hands. "No," he whispered. "Not anymore." The alien didn't press further. Instead, he nodded as if he had already expected the answer. For a long time, they rode in silence. The bus swayed gently, carrying them deeper into the city. Ethan's stomach growled softly, and he turned his face to the window, embarrassed. He hadn't eaten all day. The alien noticed but said nothing, his expression unreadable. A sudden flicker of light caught Ethan's eye. On the alien's wrist was a strange device, smooth and black with a symbol that glowed faintly in blue. It wasn't like any ticket scanner or communicator Ethan had seen before. It looked official, important. For a moment, Ethan wondered if this alien might be someone powerful, but the thought seemed impossible. Why would someone powerful be stranded at a bus station with no fare? The bus slowed again at a checkpoint. Outside, shadows stretched across the road. Armed guards inspected the vehicle before waving it forward. Ethan noticed the alien's hand tighten slightly on the armrest as they passed. A brief look of tension crossed his face, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Ethan asked carefully. The alien turned toward him, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. Then, after a pause, he answered softly, "Not trouble, responsibility." Ethan didn't fully understand, but the weight in that single word made his chest tighten. Moments later, the bus surged forward again. The chatter of passengers slowly returned, though quieter now, as if everyone sensed something uneasy in the air. Ethan leaned his head against the window, but his mind refused to rest. Questions spun inside him. Who was this alien? Why did thugs at the station stare at him like prey one moment and threat the next? And why did his presence feel so heavy, like storm clouds waiting to break? He didn't know it yet, but the answer was coming sooner than he imagined. Because the road ahead was about to grow darker, and danger was waiting in the shadows. For now, Ethan sat quietly, unaware that his simple act of kindness was pulling him into a story much bigger than his own life. A story that would test both his courage and his heart. A dangerous encounter. The bus moved deeper into the glowing city. Neon signs flashed outside the windows, and the air inside was warm compared to the cold streets. Ethan sat close to the glass, staring at the endless lines of light, but his thoughts were far away. He still could not believe he had given away his last credits. And now he was riding in a bus with a stranger who felt different from anyone he had ever met. The silver-skinned alien, who had not yet shared his name, sat silently beside Ethan. His long fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. and his eyes scanned the passengers as if he was waiting for something. Ethan noticed how people lowered their voices whenever they looked at him. It was strange. Why would ordinary passengers treat him with such quiet respect or fear? The bus slowed down as it entered a darker part of the city. The glowing signs became fewer, and tall buildings leaned over the narrow streets. The passengers shifted nervously. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. He had lived on these streets long enough to know this area was dangerous. Suddenly, with a loud clang, the bus screeched to a stop. The lights inside flickered. A group of rough-looking aliens stood in the middle of the road, blocking the way. They wore leather armor patched with metal plates, and their eyes glowed red under the shadows. Each carried a weapon, blades, rods, and small plasma pistols. Gasps filled the bus. A voice barked from outside, sharp and commanding. "Nobody leaves until we get our toll." The doors hissed open. 3 thugs stepped in, their boots clanging against the metal floor. They scanned the passengers with hungry eyes. "Money, jewels, credits, hand them over," one growled. The passengers trembled. Some quickly handed over small bags or devices, hoping the robbers would move on. Ethan's heart raced. He had nothing left to give. His pockets were empty now. He gripped the seat tightly, trying not to draw attention, but the tallest thug's eyes fell on him. A cruel smile spread across his scarred face. "A human?" he sneered. "Pathetic creature. What are you even doing here?" The thug stepped forward and grabbed Ethan by the collar, lifting him off the seat with one hand. Ethan gasped, his feet kicking helplessly. "Please, I don't have anything," he cried. Passengers looked away, pretending not to see. Nobody wanted to anger the gang. Ethan's chest burned with fear. This was not the first time he had been bullied, but it felt worse now. The thug raised his other hand, ready to strike. Before the blow could land, a voice rang out, deep, steady, and full of authority. "Put him down." The thug froze. Slowly, he turned his head toward the silver-skinned alien sitting calmly in the seat. His glowing eyes narrowed. "And who are you to give me orders?" The alien stood. His height and presence seemed to fill the bus. Though he had not raised his voice, there was a power in his tone that made even the other thugs step back. The alien's wrist device shimmered faintly, a strange symbol glowing across its surface. "Release the boy," he repeated, this time firmer. The thug hesitated. For a long moment, silence filled the bus. Then with a curse, he dropped Ethan back onto the seat. Ethan stumbled, coughing, but the alien's hand steadied him. The other thugs shifted nervously. One whispered, "Wait. Do you see that mark?" "That's—" But before he could finish, the tall thug raised a hand to silence him. His sneer had vanished, replaced with something close to fear. Without another word, the gang backed away. They moved out of the bus, muttering to each other, throwing quick glances at the silver-skinned alien. The leader barked an order, and in seconds the group disappeared into the dark streets. The bus doors closed again. Slowly, the vehicle moved forward, leaving the danger behind. The passengers sat in stunned silence. Some looked at the alien with awe, others with suspicion, but nobody dared to speak. Ethan's heart was still pounding. He turned to the alien. Who are you?" he whispered. The alien sat down again, his calm expression unchanged. "Just someone who does not tolerate cruelty," he said quietly. But his eyes gave away something more, something hidden, something heavy. Ethan studied him. The way the thugs had reacted, the way his voice carried weight, and the strange symbol glowing on his wrist. None of it felt ordinary. Whoever this stranger was, he was no simple traveler. The bus continued its journey, but Ethan could not shake the feeling that his small act of kindness earlier that night had pulled him into something far larger than he understood. He pressed his hands together to stop their shaking, wondering what secrets this mysterious alien was hiding, and for the first time, he felt both fear and hope twisting together inside his chest. Shelter in the rain. The bus came to a final stop near the city's inner district. The doors opened with a hiss and passengers hurried out into the night. The sky was dark, and heavy clouds gathered above the tall towers. A moment later, rain began to fall, thin at first, then harder, like cold needles striking the ground. Ethan stepped off the bus slowly, shivering as drops soaked through his torn jacket. He hugged himself tighter, knowing he would have to find some doorway or corner to curl up in for the night. The rain was merciless, and the streets were already turning into shining rivers of neon and mud. The silver-skinned alien stepped out behind him. His tall figure seemed untouched by the cold, though his fine clothing was quickly dampened. He looked around calmly, then turned his glowing eyes toward Ethan. "Where do you sleep?" the alien asked. Ethan hesitated. "Anywhere I can," he admitted softly. "An alley under the bridge, sometimes near the station when guards don't chase me away." The alien's face hardened for a moment. He watched the boy's thin shoulders tremble as water dripped from his messy hair. Without a word, he gestured for Ethan to follow. "Come with me." Ethan blinked. "What? Why?" "Because no child should spend the night in the rain," the alien replied simply. His tone left no space for argument. Ethan hesitated. He had learned not to trust easily. Life on the streets taught him that kindness often came with a price. But something about this alien felt different. He wasn't mocking him like others did. His voice carried weight, but also strange care. After a long pause, Ethan nodded and followed. The two walked through the wet streets. Rain hammered against the metal walkways, and crowds of aliens hurried under umbrellas and glowing hoods. Some glanced at Ethan with disgust, whispering insults about dirty humans, but none dared approach with the tall alien by his side. It was as though an invisible shield surrounded them. Finally, they stopped at a tall building whose walls glowed with soft gold light. The entrance was wide and welcoming, with carved pillars and shimmering banners. Above the door, alien script marked the name of a luxury inn known only to the wealthy. Ethan froze at the sight. I can't go in there," he stammered. "They'll throw me out." The alien's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Not tonight." He stepped forward, placing his wrist device against a scanner by the door. The machine chimed and the doors slid open at once. The guards inside straightened instantly, bowing their heads as if recognizing him. None of them even looked at Ethan. Ethan followed nervously, his soaked shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Warmth washed over him, carrying the scent of rich foods and soft incense. Golden light filled the wide lobby, where alien nobles in fine clothes chatted quietly. Ethan kept his head down, feeling out of place. At the front desk, the alien spoke a few words in his own language. The clerk, a tall being with crystal-like skin, bowed deeply and handed over a shimmering key. Within minutes, the alien led Ethan down a long corridor to a private suite. The door opened to reveal a room larger than anything Ethan had ever seen. Soft carpets covered the floor and glowing panels lit the walls with gentle colors. A wide bed sat in the center, covered with silken sheets, and a table was already set with steaming food. Ethan froze in the doorway, his mouth open. He had slept in alleys and scraps of cardboard for so long that this felt like another world. This can't be for me," he whispered. The alien looked at him steadily. "You will eat. You will rest. Tonight this is your shelter." Ethan stepped inside, his bare feet sinking into the carpet. The warmth wrapped around him like a blanket. He sat slowly at the table, staring at the dishes. Warm bread, roasted meat, bowls of fruit, and a silver pitcher of water. His stomach growled so loudly he felt embarrassed. "Eat," the alien said simply. Ethan hesitated only a moment before grabbing a piece of bread. The first bite almost brought tears to his eyes. It was soft, warm, and filled with flavor unlike anything he had tasted in months. He ate hungrily, but the alien did not judge. Instead, he sat quietly, watching the boy with an unreadable expression. When Ethan's hunger finally slowed, he leaned back in the chair, breathing heavily. His eyes met the alien's. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. The alien's gaze did not waver. "Because kindness deserves kindness in return. You gave me your last credits when you had nothing. That choice revealed more about you than you realize." Ethan frowned, confused. "But I'm just a poor human boy. Nobody cares about me." The alien's eyes glowed faintly, almost sad. "That is where you are wrong." Ethan wanted to ask more, but exhaustion swept over him. His body, finally full and warm, grew heavy with sleep. The alien stood and gestured toward the bed. "Rest now. Tomorrow will bring answers." Ethan hesitated, then crawled into the soft bed. It was the first time in months he had felt safe. His eyes closed slowly, though his mind still burned with questions. The alien remained by the window, staring out into the rain-soaked city. His wrist device shimmered again, displaying strange symbols. He spoke quietly to himself, words Ethan could not hear. "Perhaps fate has brought him to me for a reason." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, the boy slept peacefully, unaware that his life was about to change forever. The reveal of the diplomat Ethan woke slowly to the sound of rain still falling outside. For the first time in months he had slept in a real bed under a warm blanket. He rubbed his eyes, almost afraid it had all been a dream. But when he looked around, the golden walls and glowing lamps of the suite reminded him that it was real. His stomach was full from the meal he had eaten the night before, and his body felt stronger than it had in weeks. Yet his heart was restless. Who was this mysterious alien? Why would someone so powerful and respected care about a homeless human boy? Ethan sat up and noticed the silver-skinned alien standing by the window. His tall frame was still, hands folded behind his back. His eyes glowed faintly as he looked out at the rain-soaked city. Ethan cleared his throat softly. Thank you for last night. I don't know why you helped me, but I'm grateful. The alien turned slowly. His face was calm, but his expression carried weight, as though he was finally ready to share something he had been holding back. You are wondering who I am, he said. Ethan nodded quickly. Yes, everyone looked at you like they knew you. Even the thugs backed away. You're not just some traveler, are you? For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Then the alien raised his wrist and the device he wore shimmered with light. A crest appeared above it, glowing in the air, a symbol of wings wrapping around a star marked with foreign script. Ethan gasped. He had seen that crest before. It was displayed in news screens across the city, carried on banners during official visits. It belonged to the Galactic Council of Diplomats, the most powerful group in the known systems. You're a diplomat? Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. The alien stepped closer, his presence filling the room. I am Kalor, High Envoy of the Council, he said softly. I was sent to this city to negotiate peace between two rival factions. But in my journey I wished to walk among the people unseen, to understand them not as a diplomat but as a traveler. Ethan's mouth fell open. A diplomat, one of the richest and most respected beings in the galaxy, had been standing at the bus station, unable to pay his fare. And Ethan had given him his last credits without knowing who he was, but why didn't you tell anyone? Ethan asked, confused. Kalor's eyes softened. Because titles often hide the truth. People bow to power, but they ignore those without it. I wanted to see who would show kindness when they believed they had nothing to gain. He paused, his gaze locking onto Ethan. And I found you. Ethan's chest tightened. But I'm nobody. I'm just a homeless boy. Kalor shook his head. You are not nobody. You are proof that even in the darkest corners, kindness survives. You gave when you had nothing. That choice carries more meaning than you realize. Ethan lowered his eyes, his cheeks burning. He had never thought his small action mattered. To him, it was just a moment of pity, a hope that helping someone else might one day bring help back to him. But now it seemed bigger, like a stone dropped in water, creating ripples he could not see. Kalor placed a hand gently on Ethan's shoulder. The thugs last night feared me because they recognized this crest. But it was not my power that protected you, it was your courage. Do not forget that. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to understand. His mind spun with questions. What did this mean for him? Would Kalor simply leave after this, returning to his world of power and wealth? Would Ethan be forgotten once more? As if sensing his fear, Kalor spoke again. Ethan, I cannot return you to the streets. Not after what you have shown me. You deserve more than hunger and cold nights. You deserve a chance. Ethan looked up, his eyes wide. A chance? For what? Kalor's glowing eyes held his. A chance to become part of something greater. To learn, to grow, to stand where others believe you cannot. If you accept, I will not treat you as a beggar, but as a companion on this journey. Ethan's heart pounded. A part of him wanted to believe every word, but another part feared disappointment. Why me? He whispered. Because you gave me hope, Kalor replied firmly. And now I wish to give the same to you. For a long moment, Ethan sat in silence, staring at the alien who had just changed his world. The boy who had been invisible to everyone was now being seen, truly seen for the first time. Tears stung his eyes, though he quickly wiped them away. I don't know if I can. I don't know anything about diplomacy or traveling or even living like this. Kalor's lips curved into a faint smile. Then you will learn. Every great journey begins with someone who once said, I cannot. Ethan took a shaky breath. The warmth of the room surrounded him, but it was the warmth in Kalor's words that lit a fire in his chest. For the first time in his life, he began to believe that maybe he wasn't meant to stay in the shadows. Kaylor turned back toward the window, the rain still falling beyond the glass. The galaxy is vast, Ethan. It is filled with war, fear, and greed. But it is also filled with hope. Last night you gave me that hope, and I will not let it be wasted. Ethan lay back against the pillows, his mind racing. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. The invitation. The rain had stopped by morning. The golden light of dawn slipped through the wide windows of the suite, warming the polished floor and casting soft reflections on the walls. Ethan stirred awake, his eyes opening slowly. For a moment he forgot where he was. The soft bed, the gentle warmth, the smell of fresh food waiting on the table. It all felt too strange, too far from the life he had known. Then the memories of last night returned. Kaylor's words echoed in his mind. "You are not nobody." Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. He looked across the room where Kaylor stood near the window, his tall frame straight, his silver skin glowing faintly in the light. The high envoy looked as though he hadn't moved all night. His gaze was fixed on the distant towers of the city. "Good morning," Ethan said softly. Kaylor turned, his expression calm as ever. "You slept well?" "Yes," Ethan replied, though his voice trembled. "Better than ever." He hesitated, then added, "I still don't understand why you've done all this for me." Kaylor walked toward him, each step slow but steady. "Because one act of kindness can change everything. You gave me hope when I had none. Now I intend to give you the same." Ethan frowned, confused. "But I don't know anything about your world. I'm just me." Kaylor studied him carefully. "You are more than you think, Ethan. What you showed me cannot be taught in schools or bought with wealth. You gave without expectation. That is rare, and that is what the galaxy needs." Ethan looked down at his hands. They were small, scarred from rough living, yet Kaylor spoke of them as if they held great power. The thought made his chest tighten. Kaylor continued, "I want you to join me, not as a servant, not as a charity case, but as a companion. You will travel with me, learn with me, and see the stars. There is a place for your voice, a place for your heart in the work I do." Ethan's eyes widened. "Join you, you mean leave this world?" "Yes," Kaylor said firmly. "Leave the streets behind. Leave the cold nights and empty pockets. You have lived in shadows long enough. It is time you saw the light." Ethan's heart raced. The idea was too big, too impossible. He had dreamed as a child of starships, of worlds beyond the city. But those dreams had faded with hunger and loneliness. Now standing before him, the impossible was being offered as reality. "But," Ethan stammered, "I don't know how to speak to diplomats or how to live on a ship. I don't belong in your world." Kaylor knelt so that his glowing eyes met Ethan's directly. "Belonging is not given, Ethan, it is chosen. And I am choosing you." Tears stung Ethan's eyes. Nobody had ever chosen him before. The world had abandoned him long ago, left him invisible. And now a man of power, an alien who could shape entire governments, was telling him he mattered. Kaylor placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "This is your invitation, to stand where no one expected you to prove that even the smallest voice can carry across the stars. Will you accept it?" Ethan swallowed hard. His heart screamed yes, but fear whispered no. He thought of the streets, the hunger, the loneliness. He thought of the thugs who had nearly crushed him, of the cold nights he had prayed just to survive. Did he really want to return to that life? Ethan raised his eyes, meeting Kaylor's. "I'll come," he whispered. His voice was shaky but full of determination. A rare smile touched Kaylor's lips. "Then you have taken your first step into a greater world." At that moment, the door opened. A pair of attendants entered, carrying new clothes, shoes, and a small pack for Ethan. They bowed to Kaylor, ignoring their surprise at the boy's presence. Kaylor gestured toward the garments. "Prepare yourself. We leave for the spaceport soon." Ethan's chest tightened with excitement and fear. He touched the soft fabric of the clothes, hardly believing they were meant for him. As he changed, he caught his reflection in a mirror. For the first time in his life, he didn't see just a homeless boy. He saw someone standing on the edge of a new future. Kaylor stood by the door, his presence steady and strong. "Come, Ethan, the stars are waiting." The boy took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly, and followed. He didn't know what awaited him among the stars. But one thing was certain. He would never again be just the boy with empty pockets. He was part of something greater now, and this was only the beginning. From the streets to the stars, the starship's engines rumbled like thunder as it prepared for departure. Its silver hull reflected the glow of the city's towers, and a crowd of reporters, guards, and citizens gathered at the spaceport. Bright lights flashed as cameras hovered, recording every detail. The Galactic Council's High Envoy, Kaylor, was about to leave the planet. But this time he was not leaving alone. Ethan stood just behind him, dressed in clean clothes for the first time in months. The soft fabric of his new jacket felt strange against his skin. His hair had been trimmed, his face washed, but deep inside he still carried the memories of sleeping on cold stone and eating scraps. Every step toward the starship felt unreal, as though he was walking through someone else's dream. Whispers rose from the crowd. Is that a human child? What is he doing with the envoy? Impossible. How could a street boy walk beside a diplomat? The voices stung, but Ethan kept walking. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with determination. He wasn't invisible anymore. Kaylor walked tall, his silver skin glowing faintly under the lights. When reporters shouted questions, he raised his hand and the crowd grew silent. His deep voice carried across the spaceport. Hope is not found only in palaces or among the powerful, Kaylor declared. Sometimes hope is found in the smallest act, an act of kindness from one who had nothing. Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras zoomed in on Ethan. His cheeks burned, but he lifted his chin. This boy, Kaylor continued, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder, gave me his last credits when no one else would help. That choice changed everything. And so he will walk with me, not as a beggar, not as a servant, but as a companion in this mission of peace. Reporters shouted louder now, their voices full of shock. Some protested, some cheered, but Ethan barely heard them. His mind returned to that night at the bus station, when he had stared at 3 tiny coins in his palm and thought they meant nothing. Now those coins had carried him to the steps of a starship. Kaylor guided him up the ramp and the ship's doors closed behind them. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the soft hum of advanced machines. Crew members in diplomatic uniforms bowed as Kaylor passed, their eyes briefly flicking to Ethan with curiosity. Ethan tried to hide his nerves, but Kaylor noticed. Do not fear their eyes, he said gently. You are here because you belong here. Remember that. The ship lifted off, rising above the glowing city. Ethan pressed his hands to the window as the world below shrank smaller and smaller, until the lights were only tiny stars against the darkness. His heart ached with memories of cold nights and empty stomachs, but a new fire burned within him. He was leaving that life behind. Hours passed as the ship cut through space. Finally, Kaylor led Ethan into the council chamber at the heart of the vessel. The room was vast, filled with holographic displays of stars and maps. Other diplomats appeared on screens, their faces stern as they greeted Kaylor. One of them, a tall alien with golden skin, frowned when he noticed Ethan. Envoy Kaylor, he said sharply, why is there a human child in your company? Kaylor's voice was calm but firm. Because sometimes the smallest voice speaks the greatest truth. And sometimes the galaxy needs to be reminded that even the forgotten have value. The council chamber fell silent. Some frowned, others nodded thoughtfully. Ethan stood still, feeling the weight of their stares, but he didn't back down. For the first time, he wanted to be seen. Later that night, when the chamber emptied, Kaylor and Ethan stood alone beneath the starlight pouring through the ship's great dome. The stars stretched endlessly, brighter than any city lights. Ethan whispered, I never thought I'd see this. I used to sleep under bridges and wonder if anyone even knew I existed. Now I'm here. Kaylor looked at him, his glowing eyes soft. Every great story begins in shadows. What matters is how you choose to step into the light. You gave when you had nothing. That is the heart of a leader. Ethan's chest tightened. For the first time, he didn't feel like a beggar or a weak human. He felt like someone who mattered, someone who could shape his own future. The boy pressed his hand to the glass, watching the stars flicker like endless candles. Do you think I can really make a difference? Kaylor rested a steady hand on his shoulder. You already have. As the starship carried them deeper into space, Ethan closed his eyes and let the hum of the engine surround him. He didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one thing. His journey was no longer about surviving. It was about becoming something greater. From the streets of cold shadows to the halls of starlight, Ethan's story had only just begun.